Good afternoon and happy Lag Bomer. I'll answer David Barnes' question in this video. The question is, which is superior? A modern democratic republican system like we have in America, or a theocracy that's outlined in the Bible from a religious standpoint? The answer is, it depends on the time. Depends on what, when, where. When Mashiach comes, as I mentioned, we'll have a theocracy that's run by God. A true theocracy, not what we call today a theocracy. You know, could we say that Iran is a theocracy? Well, they themselves admit that Muhammad, according to their tradition, would have been the last prophet. According to our tradition, the last prophet was Malachi, was Malachi. But according to the Muslim tradition, Muhammad was the last prophet. So therefore, God is not speaking to people today, both according to Judaism and according to Islam. So is, they call it the Islamic Republic of Iran. Is it a true theocracy? I think even by their own definition, it would not be a theocracy. It would be an Islamic Republic, meaning that there's no king, and they follow the Islamic religion in their government. So that's a religiocracy as opposed to a theocracy. And so too, all we could have ever since Malachi really is a religiocracy, and not a true theocracy. Before, I would say in the time of David, time of Solomon, we had true theocracy, which was great. In the time of Hezekiah, we had true theocracy, which was great. Because we could, if we had a big question that we couldn't handle as human beings, we could go to the Urim V'Tumim, and we could get the answer. We could go to a prophet. Hezekiah could go to Isaiah, even though Hezekiah himself was a prophet, but he could go to Isaiah to hear the word of the Lord. And David could go to Nathan and Gad, even though David himself was a prophet. He could get the word. What to do? And that's what he did. Should we go to war? Shouldn't we go to war? And they had an answer. Nowadays, we don't have anything like that. So how do we decide? Should we go to war? Shouldn't we go to war? We decide it in a democratic way, or we decide it in that's what we do in our country. The Congress makes a declaration of war, although we haven't had one since World War II. Or the Congress allots funding for military operations that the president is the commander-in-chief of, which is how things have been happening really since Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War, so forth, and now in Afghanistan and so forth. But it's a democratic system, which is prone to failure. But that's at least better than just the mullah in Iran decides, we're going to go to war. Or if there's a dictator in another country just decides we're going to go to war. It's hard to say, is the mullah truly a dictator in that sense in the military sense. I don't know. I don't know enough about Iran to really address that. But we did have religiocratic governance that was started by prophets when the Second Temple was built. Anshe Knesset Gedolah, the men of the Great Synagogue, or the Great Assembly, however you want to use that. And it's usually the people, because there were men and women on that body. And so it was a democratic body that included prophets in their midst. But when that time came to an end, pretty soon thereafter, the Greeks came in. And so we were living under their rule. And then the Hasmoneans took over after the Greeks, and they were not doing things properly. And they were not really a true theocracy, nor a true Jewish religiocracy. Sometimes they were and sometimes they weren't. And then the Romans came. And that's how the Jews have lived ever since then, that when it comes to religious matters, we have rabbinical rules that we have to follow, and that's our religious governing body. And certainly when it comes to these things, and a good modern democratic republic allows people to settle things out of court. And so therefore to have arbitration in a rabbinical court and mediation and not have to go to civil court, that's ideal for a Jew. And I would say the same thing is really ideal for these other groups, is that the greatness of this type of government is it's limited in scope, and so it allows people to live by their conscience. But when the society decides there's certain things that we just cannot allow, so we put a stop to it, or we try to. And that's the way this type of government works. But just to call something a theocracy is not a true theocracy, and attempts, and we've seen in history, all throughout the Bible, we had kings, and some of the kings followed the word of God and some didn't. And so too in our governance, I certainly believe that it's best for the governing representatives to be men and women who follow to a certain extent the will of God, even if they don't believe, but at least to recognize that these laws are valuable for the world, which I mean just basic morality. I don't mean necessarily religious practices that are parochially religious, but the basic ethic that is shared, whether it's in Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, or in just plain ethical humanism that was inspired by this Jewish roots that were spread by Christianity, Islam. And then if people chose to deny God, which is wrong, is that really a societal issue? In a certain sense, yes. In a certain sense, no. Because the bigger societal issue is those who want to prevent those of us who do recognize the truth of God and want to disenfranchise us. That's the problem. I don't really care on the secular level, the government level. I would be open to vote for an atheist for president. I would be open to vote for a Muslim for president. I really don't care what their theology is, but I don't want to vote for a Marxist. I don't want to vote for a totalitarian. That's the difference. So, these are the types of things to have in mind. So right now, for the situation that we live in, for the world that we live in, this is the world that we live in. And I don't think it's possible to have a true theocracy or even a decent religiocracy today, because we don't have what we need to do that. If theoretically we could get together and the whole Jewish people would recognize one Sanhedrin, great. That would be a different story, but still, I don't think it would succeed. Just being realistic, we need the transformation of the heart that Scripture promises in order to succeed at such a thing. And so, in this fallen state of exile, temporarily, and this temporarily could be for another 1,000 years, or it could be until tomorrow. Nobody knows. But we'll all know when it happens. That's the thing. It won't. No one is going to have to convince anybody the Messiah is here. If even one human being doubts it, I would say that would be a false Messiah without a doubt. And I say, it could be 1,000 years, because I know a lot of people say it doesn't have to be the year 6,000. That's one opinion. We don't really know these things. Nobody knows. We just know someday it's going to happen. That's all we know, is that someday it's going to happen. Until it happens, there's really nothing to talk about. And so we have to just ask ourselves, what makes sense? What type of lifestyle makes sense? Does it make sense to live in squalor like they do in Venezuela? Or to live in prosperity like we do in America? Let's just look with our eyes. We don't have a choice of a true theocracy. We don't have the Urim v'Tumim. We don't have a Beis HaMikdash. We don't have a Kohen Gadol. We don't have the Paraduma. We don't have any of this stuff. So there's nothing to talk about. When the time comes, of course that's going to be the way we're going to live. Of course we're going to live as under a theocracy, but it'll be a theocracy where nobody will really need to do anything to be good. We'll just all be good. The Torah will be written inside our hearts. We're going to live Torah without. It's going to be impossible to sin when that day comes. So yes, we just have to see ourselves in an imperfect state right now, and just take it as it is. And in this imperfect state, certainly the best that we can find is this American form of democratic republicanism. That's what, to me, just common sense dictates that's what works best. And so, yes, for right now, if someone would try to set up Israel, for example, as a theocracy, it would be an utter failure. For just common sense reasons. How do you decide? Is the Psak going to be by the Ashkenazim or by the Sephardim? Is it going to be like the Hasidim or like the Yekiz or like the Litvische, like the modern Orthodox? Is it going to be consensus? Are we still going to maintain our 12 Shvatim, our 12 tribes, and maybe each group is going to do things a little differently? How do you incorporate that into a government structure? Do you incorporate it in a federalist way, like we have in America? You have 50 states, and each state has a certain level of autonomy. Is that how it's going to work? So we're going to just divide Israel into 12 states? I don't know. And I certainly think that the way to do it is indeed to, in Israel, is to divide Israel into, I'm thinking, 5 states. Israel should annex the land they want. And Gaza could be one state, West Bank could be another state, and then you can have maybe a secular state, or maybe a Dati Le'umi state, and maybe a Haredi state. I'd just say something along those lines. Maybe make more states, a Druze state, a Christian state. All united under a single federal constitutional republic that has freedom of religion, but allow the individual states to have official religious governments, but still have to answer certain things to the federal government. And so you're not going to have honor killings, you're not going to have Mises Besdin, except maybe for murder. You're not going to have these things that are distasteful. To polite society. But maybe you can say, we'll impose a fine in this state if you break Shabbos. And in this state we won't. And the thing is, anybody could live in any of those states. So a Haredi person could live in the secular state, and the secular person could live in the Haredi state. Obviously, it would be more difficult for the secularists to live in the Haredi state, although the Haredim probably would not impose fines for such things. Maybe the modern Orthodox would, because they're more of the Zionistic ideology. The Haredim classically did not, although more and more are being influenced by the Zionistic ideology. Might makes right. I mean, in a community like Curious Joel, it's just politely requested to abide by the norms of the community. It's not, you're not going to get arrested for indecent exposure if you're wearing short sleeves or if you're wearing shorts, but it's politely requested. But technically, I would say it should be legal. The problem is the ACLU and these groups, they're going to raise a whole fit about that, which is ridiculous, because nobody, this is federalism. This is what America was built on. But these types of things, and the truth is, it's like, I think, if there would be such a thing in Israel, and there would be certain, there would obviously be a difference between something that goes on privately and something that goes on publicly. But I seriously, I don't think we would be able to maintain something like that, even on the federalist level for the religious, to have religion mixed in government. It's not going to work. It's going to be a disaster. And there's no need for it. Live your religion on your own. And the thing is, like in Israel, proselytizing is illegal. I don't think proselytizing should be illegal. I don't think the government should outlaw something like that. It's nobody's business. That's how you live your faith. If that's your faith, you should have a free market. That's what upsets me about Israel, is that they have the Rabbanut and the Misrada Datot, and they decide all these types of things, and it's a government issue. I don't think it should be a government issue. Let the free market sort itself out. That's what made America great, and that's what made American religion great. is the free market, is the amount of competition that exists in the religious free market in America, that allows people to make mistakes and learn from them and grow from them, and not, not be stuck that it's my way or the highway, And the thing is, these groups that developed in America, they reformed themselves on their own. Mormons had polygamy, and then they did it, right? The Oneida cult, they had the free love cult, and then they just became, and they supported themselves with the silverware company, and then it just became a silverware company, and they dropped the cult, and that's and so that's why the Oneida, they're not around anymore, but they're heroes of business, and the Mormons are thriving. And it's the same thing. We see, different religions, they try to become left-wing, liberal, this and that, and they fail. The Reform and Conservative synagogues are empty. The mainline Protestant churches are empty, and the evangelical churches are full, and the Orthodox synagogues are full, and growing, and the traditional churches are also doing okay. Maybe they're not full, but they're not empty either. And people are interested in those things as well. The Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox and so forth. And in Islam, I don't think there needs to be a reform. That's a fascinating thing, is that you have people who are religious extremists, but are also leftists. Whereas in a lot of the Islamic communities, you have people who are normal, traditional Muslims, keeping the laws. They pray 5 times a day. They don't eat pork and so forth. But they don't want to kill people. They don't want to have honor killings. They don't want to kill infidels. They're not terrorists. They're pretty much like Orthodox Jews. We have to find a way to bring these people into American society and into American conservative society, which would be their natural home. So these are what I have to share about that. We can live, as long as we have a society where people have the freedom to live as religious people, the world will be okay. Until that time when God steps in and everything is perfect. The Olam Atikum. We're not there yet. Let's not pretend that we're something that we're not. And let's not get into trouble. Just leave things the way they are for now. Try to just maintain our lives and leave people alone who want to try something different. Let them do their thing, and as long as they let us do our thing. That's the problem with the government. When they try, they want to let 2 men get married. That's their business. Just don't force me to perform the wedding. Don't force me to bake a cake for that wedding. That's all. It works both ways, you know. So, and again, I can totally believe this is sinful and horrible, but I also have to recognize that the way I have my freedoms is because they have their freedom. So, you know, I'm all for civil liberties, but a lot of the way the ACLU goes about things, I don't know if it's so right. You know, to go and say, you know, someone opened a park on their own private property for the Hasidic community so that they can be there, and they wanted to have boys and girls separate, right? And ACLU said, no, you can't have that. The next thing they're going to do is come into our synagogue and say, you can't have men and women separate. You can't do all these things separate. But what you're basically doing is saying, well, Hasidic Jews are not welcome at this park, in a certain sense. Not, well, maybe some are open-minded, you know, or sometimes you go to a park and nobody's there. But the extremists who have their every right to be as extreme as they want, and they open this up on their own private property, why is it anybody else's business if they want to have separate, you know, gender segregation? What's wrong with that? That's what they want. That's what the women there want. That's what the girls there want. That's what both sides there want. So, thank you for watching. You know, I you know, someone's bringing up to me and saying, you know, that we should, you know, I don't know. It's it is what it is, you know. So, let's just hope that things are the way they should be, and look forward to the day when things are perfect, but not jump the gun, you know, not start acting like Mashiach is here when he's not here yet, because that just leads to problems. That was Korach's mistake already. Alright, this thing's gone on long enough. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, take care.